And welcome to Those Who Wonder podcast. You are one of the co-founders of Washmen. I'm going to ask you a few questions. Obviously, I'm going to dig deep.
How do you build something that is so good that people want to talk about it?
It's very easy to copy your model.
It was long hours, sleepless nights, difficult conditions, and I wanted a difficult life.
Have you been bullied?
Yeah.
You got to have a thick skin and you got to work on yourself a lot.
How do we deliver like a jaw-dropping customer experience, right? Like that's what you want to do. Be able to afford a laundry service for all his laundry needs. When do they come? When do they return your clothes? How do you pay?
But you also notice that you're expecting too much, right?
They tell you that the customer is always right, which I don't think is true, by the way. But for a relationship with someone who's been with us for 5 years, I'm not going to lose that over 3,000 dirhams.
Hi, Jad.
Hi.
How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
It's so nice to have you today.
Thank you.
And welcome to Those Who Wonder podcast.
Thank you.
I'm saying podcast, but I think these days it's a bit of a cringe word, but I'm going to say it again.
Everyone
it is what it is.
Everyone has one.
Everyone has one. So why not have one as well? So Jad, I'm going to ask you a few questions. Obviously, I'm going to dig deep. I am known for being a person who is curious, likes to ask questions, and I really love the emotions in every human being, and I want to understand really your story, your path. It's obviously really interesting. You are one of the co-founders of Washmen, and I'm going to let you introduce yourself because I think you would make yourself more justice. So go ahead.
It's like, where do we begin or where should we begin?
Mm-hmm.
So I'm Lebanese originally. My name is Jad Halaoui. I'm originally Lebanese, never lived there. Grew up in Saudi Arabia, Canada, and then I found my way to Dubai after a career in oil and gas. I founded Washmen in 2015 with a very good friend of mine who became one of my best friends throughout university, Rami. And we've been building this thing for 10 years. I think that's what got you interested in speaking to me, so that's why I took it in that direction. Married, young boy, enjoying this phase of life.
That's amazing. All right, interesting. So I would love to know more about your path. All right, so how you started. I want to focus a little bit more about everyone's journey. It's very different for each person. So I want to understand first what made you do this. How did it? I know that Rami, we've spoken already. I've seen some of your interviews. I know that Rami came to you with an idea, right? So from there, what happened? What was going on before as well? So were you thinking already about leaving? Were you unhappy? Were you, doing great? And then something came in. So talk me through your emotions a little bit.
Yeah. So a bit more about my career before doing Washmen. So I used to work in oil and gas for a company called Schlumberger. Mm-hmm. It's probably one of the most, it's the only company I worked for other than Washmen. And it only accounts for about less than 30% of my professional career at this point. Yep. But during that time, I worked for a list of managers, and I learned a lot from each one of them. But the gist of it is, it was a lot of hard work. It was long hours, sleepless nights, difficult conditions. I was an outdoors worker. I worked on rigs, oil rigs in the middle of Canada and sometimes offshore in Norway.
Wow.
And with that comes a lot of life sacrifice. So for the first 3 years, I was kind of okay with it. This kind of life where you drive 4 hours, you work in the middle of nowhere for a few hours, then you go home, or maybe you don't, maybe you go to another oil rig, and then you're up for 25, 30 hours, go to sleep, 8 hours and repeat. It was a good life, mainly because when you're young, it's the time to sacrifice. Yeah. I think I had an easy childhood. I grew up in Saudi, a bit in Canada, but mostly Saudi, and yeah, we had an easy life, and I kind of resented it when I went to university, and I wanted a difficult life, and I wanted something to kind of roughen me up.
Interesting.
And so I took that career and I enjoyed it, but it got to a point where I wanted something to enjoy, and in the 4th year, somehow my career and a lot of my friends' careers from Montreal merged into Edmonton, Calgary, and I was enjoying my time there. But 2015 came, oil and gas had a downturn. The price of oil plummets from 90 to 40 something. A lot of the contracts get canceled. And so one of my friends leaves and he goes to Vancouver. Another one is moving to London with his girlfriend at the time. And someone I was very close to got laid off, and she moved to Toronto. Mm-hmm. And the last guy was moving out. He was going to buy a house and move in with his girlfriend. And so all of a sudden, life just
losing bits and pieces of what makes
I
you
kind of
laugh. Yeah.
lost the social angle, which had taken me 3 years and a bit to build. And so I was just ready to. I was not going to stay there, so I had different options. One of them is, do I stay in Schlumberger and I go to North America, somewhere to Houston, where I would work for something called the B team, the Bravo team, sorry, which was meant to be the Alpha team, but they called it the Bravo team. Flying around, working super hard, no days off. One of the best things about that hard work lifestyle is that you got 2 weeks on, 1 week off. And if you didn't take that week off, you could bank those days and take them later in summer. So yeah, okay, you work hard, but you still had a nice 6-week break every summer for the first 3 years, sometimes 8 weeks in a row. So that was going to go away if I went to the US. I wanted to go to Norway. They told me that's not an option. Saudi Arabia was another offer that I did not think was worth taking. I just didn't want to go back to, again, living in the middle of nowhere for 6 weeks at a time, even if that meant having a 3-week vacation anywhere in the world. Even though it paid very well. Do an MBA, option, I guess, 4, whatever. And then the last one was invest in a friend or join him as a partner, which became an invitation to join as a partner. And at that junction, I just thought that the least risky option for me was to leave my career in oil and gas and do this.
The least risky?
Yeah, I think so. It's counterintuitive, but if you look at it, it's like that I didn't know this lingo back then, but this one way door, two-way door decision. Leaving oil and gas was, you always had the option to go back. I was in a very good relationship with my manager at that time, where if I had left, I could have easily gone back if things didn't work. And in fact, when I left, I had a ticket back to Dubai, to Canada in October. Yeah. It was already booked. And I had left my car in the company and literally left it in the company parking lot.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's like the crisis in Dubai.
I lost the car. I lost the car because I was too lazy or too busy at work to figure. I didn't have the mental space to get it back. So I lost the car. The company, the country, the government took it, and then I don't know what they did with it. I lost a lot of books in there. That's a regret. Okay. So yeah, I mean, at that point, the least risky option was to do Washmen. And it was to take a bet on myself. When you work crazy hours for a company, sure, you got paid for it, but you kind of are doing it for someone else at the end of the day. And so when the opportunity comes to suffer or sacrifice for myself, I thought it was worth it. And I'd been living my life financially where you get paid very well, but your fixed expenses are very low, and you can manage the variable costs. So we had this concept, my friend Hussein and I, we used to talk about it all the time, which is expand and contract. And so whenever we had lived with a lot of contraction, in order for the ability where one day, if an opportunity came, we could jump on it. And for me, the opportunity was to invest in Washmen and then build Washmen.
And how old were you at that point?
2015, so must have been 26 years old. When I came to Dubai, I was 26 years old.
Yeah, that's quite young. So have you made this decision yourself, or did you take some time? Was it quick? Did you think about it? Did you speak to your family, your friends? Did you have someone special at the time to talk to?
I don't remember, to be honest. No, actually, that way I don't remember. I remember certain phases of the conversation or the decision making. I was in Italy at that point. I traveled with a few good friends for a few days, few weeks actually, and we discussed it, but I don't remember what they said. Okay. And I remember talking to my father about it, but I don't remember what he said.
So it was mostly you, right? So it was just like something that urged you to just take it. You were in a place where you have two choices: either stay comfortable, let's say, even if you're working a lot, or go and take a chance, as you said, invest on yourself. And you went for that. And then you moved to Dubai, correct?
Yeah, so I'd never been here. And I took the bet and I decided to, again, it was a bet on myself. I was like, okay, what do I do now? Do I bet on myself and try to do this, or do I go do an MBA? It's like, well, this is a real life MBA. You can go build a business and make it big. Did I ever imagine it would be as big as it is today? No. Did I ever imagine I would have 500 employees plus? That's the wrong word, that we would have 500 employees plus. I never thought that I would ever be able to manage a company of this size.
So let's dig deeper onto this into this point. I think I'm gonna talk about the future now and then go back a little bit. So if you had today the same, let's say, struggles that you went through, and regardless of where you are today, you've made it, you didn't make it. If you look back and see all of the journey that you've been through, is this something that you would have still said yes to at 26 years old? Yeah. You would? Easy.
Yeah. It's a no-brainer. And do you look at, again, it's you can't measure, I don't measure life's journey in years or in dollars accumulated. It's kind of like, what's the story I want to tell myself? But also like the best story is the one, what's the story you would tell your grandchildren? And if I want to look at the life that I've lived, I think I've made decisions that I'm very proud of now in hindsight. Now that I can say I'm proud about things.
Yeah.
After therapy, you can say a lot of things you never said before.
We'll get into that.
Yeah, so I can say I'm proud of the decisions I've made because I've never prioritized comfort I've never given fear more space than it deserves in life. I never let it drive my actions. So I know, okay, yeah, if you tell me what I went through now, I can tell you that there was a lot of fear. There was a lot of critical moments in which a lot of what we worked for could have been lost due to no fault of our own or due to external circumstances. But I think we lived in a way where we were quite, again, contracted as Washmen, where we had the ability to survive. We were never too lavish with the way we spent. We were never too aggressive or ambitious with the way we spent, even though we've made some stupid mistakes at quite large scale, but it was never so reckless. So in hindsight, do you ask me, would I go back and do it again? I'd say yes. And the reason is that I can live to tell the story one more time.
The same story
of telling it. I mean, the amount of laughs that Rami and I have when we share the crazy moments we've had. Yeah, that's life's work, right? That's the way you want to live. And that's the way I would want my son to live, actually.
100%. Yeah. That's something that you're proud to actually give to as an advice as well to anyone around you or a story to tell. I think that's really impressive.
Yeah, and it's not new. This is not like a framework I'm applying in retrospect. It was, I remember, again, with Hussein, Hussein was one of my very good friends in oil and gas in Schlumberger, and still one of my good friends. There was a moment in 2012. It was the end of 2011. We had just rented an apartment together. We sat down. It was Christmas Eve, and he was flying to Montreal the next day. And we had just rented this apartment. We didn't even have a couch. We had nothing. We sat down, Ergile in, but like middle of nowhere, Alberta. It's pretty cool to have that.
Yeah.
We had an Ergile in the middle of nowhere, Alberta. Okay, we sat down on the moquette, on the carpet flooring, and then we just like, so what is this for? Like, why are we doing this? And this kind of decision of saying, this is the story I would want to live to tell. That's it. And that was from 2011. And Schlumberger is that story. Of course, we don't have enough time to explore the craziness of it. But I mean, the amount of like stupid things that we did, the young, like stupid, I was naive, inexperienced, immature, prepared me for the day that for Washmen.
Yeah.
For not making the same mistakes again. I paid the consequences at someone else's dime, right? So I did things to make someone else money, but I also made mistakes at their expense.
Of course. And
I
think
learned life's lessons at their expense.
Definitely. At 26, I think it's a bit avant-gardist as well. Like it's a bit, you already at 26 knew that you wanted to tell that story, which is kind of amazing. Not everyone at 26 thinking about telling a story. Like when I was 26, I was thinking about going out. How am I going to make more friends? Like partying, the beginning of work, beginning of making money. And at 26, you decided like, okay, I've made some money. Let me just invest in myself and just throw this money that I've made and get into a business, which is quite impressive. And actually today, where do you and Rami stand? Like what do you do on a day-to-day basis? What do you handle? What does he handle?
So the way we split work over time, so when we first started, we shared a lot of things because 1 + 1 in the early days makes a lot more than 2. And what I mean by this is the power of 2 brains gets more work done than the power of 2 individual brains. So we did a lot of work together in the beginning. So we shared operations, we shared the finance side, and then eventually the company scales to a point where it's no longer feasible to do it that way. So over time, we reverted back to the split that was originally intended, which is that I manage all things operations and that he manages all things that are externally facing. Externally facing meaning the customer app, the marketing, finance and financial reporting, and investor relations. And on my side, I manage all things operations, customer service. So operations meaning laundry, logistics, customer service, HR, and that. So what a normal day looks like at this point is a lot of management, but also a lot of time to think freely, to be honest. So I've structured life now in my schedule in a way where I am busy, and I mean busy, I mean committed to meetings and stuff for about 15 hours a week. And then the other 25 hours, plus sometimes some things on the weekends, I'm reading something, listening to something, looking at the gaps in the organization and trying to figure out where is my time most useful and where is every minute that I spend more valuable to the organization than in others.
Nice.
There's room to think now, whereas before in the early days, we were just like a very defensive, reactive organization Whereas now, if you speak to our operations team, what we're very happy with is we used to be reactive firefighting, and now we're on the offense. We see problems before they happen. We work on fixing them before they grow. So the idea is like, how do we deliver what's you can refer to as like a jaw-dropping customer experience, right? Like that's what you want to do.
Yeah.
And I love that. It's not my terminology, but like, how do you build something that is so good that people want to talk about it? And in my case, because we're defensive, is how do you eliminate all things that prevent you from delivering that?
Mm-hmm. And how did this take shape in the beginning? I know it was Rami's idea mainly. So is this, did this come from a specific need, or is this something that you saw that the market lacks?
So the origin story was that Rami was in banking, and he was an investment banker working at Morgan Stanley, long hours. There was a need for him. And after that, he joined a private equity. I think the hours did not change too much. I remember I stayed in his house once when I was still living in Canada, and he was working till 3 a.m. and then waking up at like 5 a.m. when he was in private equity. Yeah. So the challenge was still there. And so I think he was time poor and sufficiently cash rich to be able to afford a laundry service for all his laundry needs. And it was still a pain point because you had a lot. When do they come? When do they return your clothes? How do you pay? How much do you owe? And so there was a lot of challenges that he faced with just the overall experience that he wanted to build something to fix it. So he goes out, he tries to find someone to help him build it. And the girl he reaches out to, Hiba, who's a friend of ours now, and she's the founder of a great startup also called Eclectic. They do furniture.
I know it. Yeah. I love Eclectic actually.
So Hiba was the
free ad.
Right? Free ad for Eclectic. Yeah. So Hiba's a very good friend of ours. And Rami tries to recruit Hiba to build Washmen with him. And she's like, dude, what are you talking about? I'm at Uber. I'm not leaving Uber to build a laundry business with you. How about you come to Uber, ride this rocket ship, and then decide if you want to do this. And if you have the option to learn, again, at someone else's expense, and learn the things you need to learn. So Rami joins Uber. And he spends a year there. He can tell his story, but pretty much Rami did not and does not enjoy having managers, which is fair enough. I mean, I get it.
Does anyone enjoy having managers?
Yeah, if you have a good manager, of course. But sometimes even if you have a good manager, you just don't like to be managed. I think I was one of them. Okay. I enjoyed having good managers, but I didn't enjoy being managed. Yeah. And so Rami leaves to start Washmen. Then I think at that point, Hiba did not want to leave Uber, stayed about a bit extra. And then gives me a call to invest in him, and that was it. That was really it. It was
it seems quite easy, right? Like it seems like it just
in hindsight, the story
kind of meant to be. Yeah,
of course. But there were a few things that helped me make the decision to join. Was the first of them was that he got into Flat 6 Labs, which is an incubator accelerator. So they believed in the idea sufficiently to invest and give us a platform to figure out what this startup thing means in the region. Yeah. And that was useful for us because in a world where there was only 5 VCs and getting investment for any one of them was not that easy, having a stamp of approval of an accelerator or incubator back then was useful. How useful it is today is a different story. Again, I'm telling a story that is 10 years old now.
Yeah, I think actually it takes me to my other question, which is a lot of startups, like it's a bit easier for startups to start today. But if I were to ask you, if let's say I come to you with an idea and I tell you I want to leave my job and I want to start this X, Y, and Z, like I want to create something, whether it's interesting or not, what are the main things that you would advise a person who wants to leave their job and go deep into creating their own business?
The first thing I would go to is try to figure out what their motive really is.
As a person.
What is the actual motive behind starting a job, behind starting a company?
Yeah.
Do you have a desire for fame? Do you have a desire for control? Do you have a desire for wealth? Everyone is different. I'll tell you, I want to be rich. That was it.
That was your...
That was it. I just wanted to be rich.
Yeah.
I mean, otherwise I wouldn't have worked like an animal for an oil and gas company.
Yeah.
And as taboo as it is to say I want to be rich, there's a purpose behind it because I believe, and it's unpopular to say, that capitalism is a system through which you can deploy capital to earn more capital, and then with that capital you can do things that make the world a better place. We don't all need to talk about what we're doing, but If someone reads Washman's story, we've even donated some of our revenue to charitable causes in the past. We do that on a personal level. And the more we make, the more we try to do that, right? So for me, money was a tool and I wanted to be rich. But sometimes people are not doing it to be rich. Sometimes people are doing it because they're afraid of, they don't like their boss. And they just want to be on their own. And sometimes that's a good enough motive, but is that sufficient? Does that, will that be able to take you through the hardships? Do you have enough motivation and drive within you, within that reason that you've created, raison d'être that you've created, to be able to pursue an opportunity? And quite often it doesn't take long for you to see that people don't have that, because ultimately when you decide to leave a job and start your own thing, you're deciding to bet on yourself. And it's not a partial bet, it's a total bet. And of course, when you're younger, it's a lot easier. But when you carry the burden of expectations of food you need to put on the table, a house you need to put over your family's head, the stakes are much higher. And the room for error is a lot smaller. So when people reach out to me and they want to start their own thing, I'm always trying to figure out, are you trying to figure out what your quote unquote price in the market is? Do you want to figure out how much money people will give you? Or are you trying to build something that you believe will give you the life that you want to live, or the resources that you will accumulate enough resources for you to live life the way you want to live it? Are you seeking it for lifestyle? What is it exactly that you're seeking?
So that's the first thing, right? So the motive.
It's the motive.
And what's let's say, give me like a couple of things, or like is this the most important thing? Because I know there are so many. Yeah.
The idea is secondary.
Yeah.
The ideas are a dime a dozen. At the end of the day, execution is what matters. You can have many ideas. Of course, an idea matters. And then the next thing, but of course we have to discuss it, even though it's secondary to the motive. But choosing, like I think we made, it's funny to say this, but I mean, I'll always say, like, we could have tackled a much bigger market than laundry. We were naive enough and stupid enough at that age to pursue a very niche industry where the total addressable market is not that large. If you look at the market, people say, again, I say people, like research companies say that we have about 12.5% of the total market. Okay. Which is not that much. Yeah. But of the online market, we have, let's say, X percent. I'm not going to reveal that, but we have X percent of that total market, right? So we still have a lot of room to grow. But no matter how much we grow, we'll never be $1 billion, multi-$100 million business. I'm okay with that. In hindsight, I actually think we selected the kind of market that we are happy to pursue now at this age. Did we settle? Maybe. But if you want to go after something, you have to kind of figure out, are you the right founder for this market? So the next one is not only product to market fit, because you haven't even reached it, but are you the right founder for this kind of business? Okay. If you come and tell me I'm going to build a health insurance startup, I'm not the guy. Okay. And I don't want to pursue it, but there are many people you meet and you're like, you're definitely the right person for this. But
is it because of it's not because of the industry knowledge, because I know as well that when you started Washmen, obviously you weren't an industry expert in laundry. I was an
operations expert.
Operations, 100%.
Expert.
Yeah, so.
Amateur.
Exactly, but that's what you went into. Yeah. So what does it take from, in your opinion, for a person to be the right person? So industry expert, one, maybe, but what qualities does a person need to have to be the right founder?
In the early stages of a business, I would say extreme intensity, persistence, relentlessness, and a very high amount of curiosity.
Interesting. I think you have all of those, knowing you a little bit.
In some areas, I'm curious about some things, but there are some things that I just, I would rather watch paint dry. I've said this before, I forgot when, but I said this to a friend of mine. I'm like, dude, some things I just really would watch paint dry. Yeah. Like, I am not interested in knowing about influencers, even though I'm sure they have, like, I just don't want to know about the influencer markets, financials, and like how many, I just don't want to know. I'm sure it's a very interesting world for many people. Like me, to found an agency for influencer marketing, I'm going to fail. I don't have the temperament for it.
So then how did your personality, actually your past, your history, your personality, how did it form you to actually be able to do this job properly? Like, tell me a bit about how you went about it.
The amount that people attribute to nature versus nurture when it comes to character varies greatly. To some extent, I wonder how much of it is nature and how much of it is nurture.
You still wonder?
Yeah, I still wonder because I think a lot of it was a predisposition to being the way I am. And the second one is, meaning nature. And the second one is that my parents, specifically my father, nurtured me within that nature. What I mean by that is when I was bad in mathematics and maths, I wouldn't mind spending crazy hours. Friday morning back in Saudi was the weekend. 2 hours every Friday morning, Sunday morning, studying maths with my father.
Oh, yeah.
And then doing that again in the afternoon after coming back from Burger King or McDonald's and having a Happy Meal or something, and sitting down for 2 hours and doing maths. Up until the age when I was old enough to remember that we were on Friends season 4 or something, right? So I was doing that all the time and I had the ability and the focus to do it. I would also wake up at 6 in the morning, 5:30 in the morning, and I would study for an hour and a half before I went to school. Weekends, I would wake up very early in the morning and I would do it. And when I asked my father-in-law was asking my father when we were at my birthday 2 years ago. And my father said, word for word, and this is why I tell you, I don't know how much of it is nature. He said, he was just born that way. He was just organized and we didn't understand it.
So you had discipline since you were born? You had,
I think I have, and I still have, this strong desire to not fail.
Okay, that's a different
the driver.
thing. Yeah.
And so the effort is such that I want to avoid failure. And then eventually, of course, in order to avoid failure, and if you want to be very, very far from failure, then you might as well apply yourself to the task and dedicate yourself to it so that you become so good at it that success becomes the only option. It's kind of like the elimination. Success is nothing but the elimination of failure or all things that could make you fail. I mean, that's one definition of success or one route to get there.
Maybe your definition of success.
Yeah, it's been my route to getting to where now I feel that there is a fair amount of success in my life, at least in my personal life and in my work life.
And when, or let's say, what was your biggest failure, if any? And did it affect you, like mentally? Is this the reason why you're afraid to fail? Or how do you cope with it today?
I really don't know. I mean, when I go back to my youth, I don't know what failure was when I was young. I really have no clue.
Maybe when you were...
I think what it comes down to is a sense of inadequacy. I did not like feeling inadequate, and failure made me feel inadequate. I just didn't like feeling out of place. I have a deep sense of wanting to belong to a community, to a small group. Of course, as I've aged, I'm 36, but as I've gotten older, I've realized that the community I want to belong to is not as big as I thought the one I wanted to belong to is. But when I was young, I really wanted to feel a sense of belonging. And I think a feeling of inadequacy made me feel like I didn't belong. And so trying to not fail was trying to just make sure that I belonged to something or that I felt good about myself, good enough to feel like I belonged. Again, I'm not too sure about this, but when I think about why I didn't want to fail, I just didn't want to feel embarrassed.
Yeah, it's
by myself, by others. I don't know. I really don't know.
Shame is a big word.
Probably a big
most
word,
people say, right? Psychiatrists say that it doesn't exist. Like shame is a word that doesn't exist. It's self-made. It's something that you see within yourself. But I mean, I'm not going to get into deep psychology.
No, but within our cultures, these are things. These things are very common.
And Arab cultures are very specific, right? Like I was talking to a friend yesterday, and he kept talking about his role as a man, as a provider of the family, etc. And this is something I want to tap into as well, right? So at 26, you were young. You didn't have these maybe thoughts yet, but today, as a person who has a family, who has different. Let's say different responsibilities, and much more important, are these things that are these responsibilities going to change the way you're working, or have they changed the way you work? Are you working harder? Are you working less? Where are you today in that perspective?
Yeah, I'm still stuck on the shame thing and guilt thing, but I'll answer your question.
I would love to dig deeper.
We don't need to. We don't need to. I'm thinking about it, and I'll tell you. I'll answer your question this way. So the question that you just asked is about how has becoming a family man, specifically being a father, I guess, changed my approach to work. And I'd say it didn't.
It
changed my approach to work. What it changed is the relative size that I perceive certain problems to be versus how I perceived them before.
Nice.
As in the moment, maybe not the moment, but over the first few days of having a child, it's an automatic forcing function of what matters in life right? It just forces you to like reorganize everything. And it's not like, for me, it was just like, it became clear. Things just got reorganized, and I said, this is the new order with which life must be lived. Or this is the new order with which I want to live my life.
So what are your priorities today versus when you first started?
Washmen. So when I first started Washmen, I'll tell you the story I told my wife, is that when we had first met, I have a different priority every single day.
Every day?
Every day.
Okay.
And I will be juggling between three priorities. One is the company.
Okay.
2 is myself. 3 is my wife. And at that point, my girlfriend. And at that point, every single day, there had to be a different priority based on what needed the most attention.
Okay.
And the idea was to never try to, piss off the same person 2 days in a row, even though that was not always possible. But that was it. I was juggling the priority. And if now you ask me, what is my priority every morning? It's my son. And then it's my wife. And then it's my life. And of course, I give myself the space because I've become mature enough to recognize that I do need to find time for me to exist out, as Jad as an individual, not Jad as the father, Jad as the husband, Jad as the, founder, Jad as the business partner, Jad as the manager, and so on and so on. There needs to be I need to have time for myself. And I find that time while I walk my dog every morning. Yeah. And every evening. So there is time that I make for myself, but the priorities are the same, and it's
they just shift a little bit
listen,
in order. As an order,
it's a tectonic shift in one direction, right?
Yeah.
I want to be with my son, and I want to see him grow, and I want to see him develop, and I want to see how he is, and if I have another kid, I don't know what that would look like, but it's the family, right?
So, question: so if you had the opportunity today, let's say you stayed in oil and gas, and you've made very good money, you have a family, and Rami comes to you today and asks you to quit all of that and join Washmen, knowing what you know today, would you do it?
I don't like hypotheticals.
Why?
There's no need to answer that.
So let's say, fine, let's change the question.
I don't think you or anyone listening will benefit from my answer to that question, and I'll tell you why.
Okay.
Because this assumption that previous success would prevent or would alter the approach to me opening a business is not relevant to anyone who's listening, because that is a very individual bet. Because if I was an oil and gas guy, I would probably not be in Dubai. I don't know how wealthy I would be. I have no clue where I would be. How much is enough money if I was in that field? Would that be enough money for me today? I really don't know. But what I'll tell you, would I start a business tomorrow? Given the position that I am in today, yeah, I would.
So you
maybe
would start
not tomorrow, maybe in 6 months.
You would start a new business.
If you let's turn the situation and say, okay, Jad, you've done that, you've taken that risk. Here you are, you're if it's taken you 8, let's make it more interesting. It's taken you 10 years to get to this position you're in, 8.5 years of which were financial uncertainty. You've only had financial certainty for a year and a half, and you've built a business that can provide you financial certainty for years going forward, hopefully if nothing changes. Would I go in and build a business from scratch
today
in 6 months? No, I want a break. Okay, I want to
fine
break.
6 months. I'll give it to you.
Yeah, in 6 months. I would.
You would.
There's a joy in building. I'm not an investor. I mean, I could be an investor, but I would only operate in private equity and venture capital, or that's my predisposition to be in things where you are building, where you're the builder, where you're creating value, where you are working within a team to do something. Some people have different temperaments and different personalities and different styles, but would I love to build something from scratch in a new field and get obsessed with something all over again and go through that, again, that all-consuming experience of discovering a new field? Yeah, absolutely.
All right. And let me ask you, so a lot of people that I speak to, including myself and everyone that is starting a business or wants to start a business, thinks about finances. It's a vicious cycle, right? If you don't have the finances, you need more time. If you take more time, you lose money, etc., etc. So if someone doesn't have the finances, it's very hard to get some seed money before you start with your idea, before the concept is ready. What are some of the things that you would advise from a financial perspective? Let's say, would you advise people to stay in a job to have a secure income until they figure out what they want to do, or they have a bit of traction, or would you advise people to leave everything and give it their all, because also time is money at the end of the day? What would you advise?
I think it depends on each person. It depends on their circumstances, their temperament, their personality. Personally, what drove me to make this decision was that I had enough savings to take a risk. I had built, people call it a cushion. At that point in my life, I considered it a sofa. I had enough of a space and large room for error. But also, I probably did that because I'm the type of person that can only do one thing. I wouldn't be capable, or I don't think within the current mindset and skill set that I have today, I would be able to go and start another thing and manage two businesses. I'm just not interested enough in splitting my focus towards managing different businesses. Okay. I'm not even interested in advising other businesses, to be honest. Yeah. And so, depending on what your temperament is as an individual, are you the type that can only do one thing? If that is the case, then you will fail at trying to do your job and do a business on the side. Okay. If not, if you're the kind of character has the capacity to do 3 or 4 projects, and you're very creative and you can explore things and let them go then yeah, by all means, keep your job and start your business, and make sure that you have a safety net that can cover 6 months of expenses, and give yourself the time to say, I will try it for this long, and if it doesn't work, then, I'll let it go. The most important thing in all of it is the mentality of saying, I'm betting on myself. And whenever someone leaves their job, or even post facto after they leave their job, even if I don't think it was a wise idea, I tell them, man, or woman, man, whoever it is I'm talking to, man, you've done the most important part. You've bet on yourself, and now you have to go all the way with that. And if it doesn't work, then that doesn't work, and then you learn, and then you figure out why it didn't work, and you do it again, or you decide that it wasn't for you, and you value security and stability above the ability to determine your time, because that's ultimately what it is, right? You build your own business because you think you're going to be able to manage your own time, but in the beginning you don't. In the beginning, your time is everybody else's, and then eventually you get to a state where you control your time better than you did in the early days.
So you talked about something very important, yourself. So a lot of founders today, and I speak to a lot of them, go through ups and downs. They go through a lot of mental hurdles, let's say, and it's not always it's something that blocks them from moving forward. And I feel like a lot of them talk about loneliness. They say that being an entrepreneur or doing something on your own is quite lonely. It becomes quite heavy. It's important to have someone by your side. It's important to feel like you're surrounded with friends, with family. And the way you speak as well shows that you are, I think, someone that introspects, someone that takes care of their mental health and physical health. I might be wrong. So it's something that I would love to understand. Like, how do you get help? Do you have a good support system? How do you work around that?
The joke in the family is that Jad has 100 coaches.
Amazing.
Yeah, and it's a joke because it's uncommon.
Yeah. But do you have multiple coaches?
I have many.
That's amazing.
The idea is that I think we all try to live life on hard mode because we romanticize, and I was one of them. Really, I was one of them. And I still, sometimes I choose the harder path, and when I realize that, I'm saying, why am I doing this? It doesn't sound right. It doesn't feel right. The idea that suffering makes life's achievements more valuable or more precious, I think is wrong.
I agree.
It's an inevitable part of living that you will suffer, but then there's self-imposed suffering. And what I mean by self-imposed suffering is that you make it hard on yourself, and when you can solve a problem in 3 seconds by asking someone, and you learn everything you need to learn in those 3 seconds, if someone gives you that, 3 seconds is an underestimate, but 1 minute, you learn everything you would have needed to learn, then you are better off asking someone for help. And so in my case, I had been, I think, I think where this is going is the mental health side of it. I just didn't feel like myself in 2018. Things didn't feel right. I didn't feel right. I didn't recognize the way I was living life or the way I felt in between moments. And I was walking down the street in Beirut to watch the game between England and Tunis in the World Cup. And I remember just something came across me and I said, you know what? That podcast with Jerry Colonna I listened to because my friend referred him to me. I'm going to listen to that right now. And then I heard reboot.io and I went to reboot.io and I pressed the button and I filled the form that needing help, the way I requested help. And I said, I don't feel right in my body. I don't feel, I was much heavier. I was 120 something kilos, which is about 20 something heavier than today. I didn't feel like my relationship with my now wife was going in the right direction, with my co-founder was going in the right direction. I didn't feel like, and the worst of all is my relationship with myself had degenerated significantly. And I was just kind of in this mode of survival. And so I said, I need help. It was easy for me to recognize that. I would have imaginary palpitation or real palpitations from imaginary vibrations of my phone, which was not even in my pocket.
Anxiety, basically.
Right. Mad amounts of anxiety.
Yeah.
So I needed help. I wasn't going to figure that out on my own. I was too proud, but to go to a therapist. So I went with an executive coach. That's where it started. And so from 2018 till today, I've been working with the same executive coach. I value him a lot and what he's brought to my life. But what he also opened the door for is realizing that, I'm not reinventing the wheel, and that my journey or my struggles are not unique to me. They're quite common. And because they're quite common, that means, and if someone's exposed to a lot of them and he's heard a lot of them and he's trained to support you in figuring them out, then might as well go to them with the hardest problems I'm facing and I'm not able to solve on my own. Save
time, save money. I mean, you're going to pay for it,
but get that thought partnership, right? You save. I mean, the money part is not one that I compute, even though it's quite an expensive support system, right? To get an executive coach. And I used to pay out of pocket 100% in the beginning. Even though at that point it was a significant amount of my income. Even during COVID, I maintained it, even though it was an even more significant amount of my income after the salary cuts we took during COVID. It was something that was non-negotiable for me, and that remains non-negotiable for me. But after that, I started therapy. I got a personal trainer because I had a lot of posture issues that I fixed. I got a paddle trainer to learn paddle instead of trying to figure it out on my own and, be the guy who does everything on his own. I have someone who helps me with posture, someone who helps me with strength, someone who helps me with the executive coach. I don't have a therapist. I don't see a therapist anymore regularly like I used to before. Now it's very infrequent, but it's kind of like I check in with them. Nice. Like you go to a doctor and you do a blood panel. It's kind of the same thing. So I get a lot of help, especially because, again, I am in a financial situation that allows me to do that now. But even when I wasn't, I got help where I needed it the most, where I thought my dollar would take me the furthest. And an executive coach was really, really quite expensive back then. And I still paid for it out of pocket.
It still is very expensive.
Right, but relatively to my income now, it's a lot less expensive. But back then, and now the company is successful, so the company pays that. But I had to pay it in the early days because it was the thing that I needed the most, personally or professionally. It didn't matter. So I got a lot of help.
And is there any strain on relationships in general when you're, it could be as well a strain when you're in a corporate job and you work too much, but as an entrepreneur, let's say, as someone who is taking risk, what sort of strain does it have on let's say your girlfriend back then is today your wife, or your friends or your family? Did it affect your social life, or were you able to manage?
So you mentioned the loneliness, and the loneliness is inevitable. I think it's inevitable. And the reason it's inevitable is that if you think about, building a business or taking on any venture where you are on your own and its success depends on the efforts that you put in and the amount of problems that you figure out, whether on your own or with your partner, it's an exercise that you do on your own because you're thinking about it mostly by yourself most of the time. And when that happens, sometimes, again, I went back to that thing of playing on hard mode. Sometimes you want to figure it out on your own, even though you can ask your business partner, you can ask your life partner, you can ask for help. If you can't, small things like you asked about the house, with my wife now, simple thing where hey, I'm so overwhelmed right now at work. I need you. Like, it would be great if you could 1, 2, 3 around the house. I can't commit. Versus trying to commit because you want to be Superman and do everything and then failing on those commitments. And so a big part of that, loneliness is self-imposed and then it's self-reinforced. And so to some extent, the journey out of it has been trying to figure out how do I manage my commitments to those that are very important in my life in a way where I do not fail them. And we'll go back to, I didn't want to fail others. I didn't want to disappoint others. And trying to make sure that I set expectations based on what I am truly capable of, not the Superman version of me that that we all hope we can be. It's kind of saying, I'm a mere mortal. I'm not special. I'm not Elon Musk. Talking about founders with mental health problems. I'm not Elon Musk. I'm not
that's a different,
off this charts intelligent or capable or whatever. I'm a mere mortal with very limited capacity. This is what I can do. Let me live life within my bounds. And I can try to expand my bounds very slowly in the directions that are possible, rather than trying to say, I can do so much more and I need to do and I should and I want and I must. And if I don't, then I am a failure or whatever. It's like, okay, well, you could do that and self-reinforce the loneliness. Or say, okay, I can, I need your help with this. This is what I can bring to the table. Cool. Yes. Most of the time people will say yes.
Yeah.
If it's severely unbalanced, then that's a different problem. But generally, when you communicate openly about where you stand and they communicate openly about where you stand and you figure that dynamic out in a relationship, professionally, personally, purely friendships, romantic, professional, it gets easy. And I'll tell you, for example, like at some point I started realizing that I had so many expectations that I wanted to set that I was not communicating. I wrote a 16-page document.
For yourself?
2021. No, for people who work with me. Saying it's called Jad's Work User Guide. This is how I want to work and how I want to work with you. And how I want you to work with me. I'm a founder, I'm a chief operating officer, so a lot of people report into me. But I don't think that's what made me do that. What made me do that is saying, I have things that I don't feel comfortable communicating on the fly. And then I have these thoughts that I have about others and how they're showing up to work that I'm not communicating. And then it frustrates me. And then I said, okay, if I write this down, what would it look like? And so I sat down and I wrote down this long document. And I said, man, you know what? I'm actually insane in many things. And I have unreasonable expectations of many people around me and that I've never communicated, but I actually don't think even I would want to expect it of them. And yet I'm upset with them for not even meeting these expectations that I think are unreasonable. And so doing that exercise forced me to kind of say, how do I want to negotiate my boundaries with the world around me? And how do I want the world around me to interface with me also?
I love this because it's not only about you, right? So it's also how to work in a community. It's not only about what you want. It comes from a, let's say, place.
It comes, from a me place, but because I want to belong also. Yeah. I don't want to have negative feelings towards the people that I work with.
But you also notice that you're expecting too much, right? So it's self-awareness.
After writing it down.
Exactly.
It was not, before writing it down, I thought it was very rational. And then I wrote it down and I reread it. And I reread it and I said, this is, it was about 40 pages handwritten. So it took a long time to do it.
But I do believe, honestly, today, and I focus on this a lot in my life, and I try to apply it to myself, because I always have this, everyone has this idea that what they think is right. And it's not about being right. It's just, this is how you were raised. You were conditioned in many ways to think about X, Y, and Z in a certain way. So you would expect it from others. But everyone has the different perspective. Everyone has a different conditioning as well. So you cannot expect the same thing from others, or even things that you think are right. So I think it's very important, and I applaud you for this, to eventually you got to a point where you realize what are your needs and how to communicate it with the world, but also not to expect those people to do the same thing that you're doing or to deliver the way you expect them to deliver. It's just how life is, right? And I think to dig deeper into Washmen again, so the company and your path, I would love to understand. I mean, obviously today you're a great business, right? So there are lots of things that go into a business. One, how do you differentiate yourself? Because it's very easy to copy your model. not you as in Washmen, any model. It's very easy to copy it. What are some of the things that you failed at and learned from? So a bit of the story, like take me through the story of Washmen.
So there's this concept called the crux. And the crux is the point at which if you apply the most amount of pressure, attention, detail, focus, if you move that needle or if you focus your energy on that, the thing you're trying to work on will be figured out. For example, I did shoulder surgery. I have a problem in my shoulder now 6 months later. We know that there's one muscle that is not working. If that muscle works, the entire shoulder will move the right way. So the crux is to figure out that muscle's strength. In Washmen, the crux, and the reason I don't think the model is easy to copy, the success many have failed trying. And the reason is that the crux of this business is trying to figure out how do you build a business, or what is it that in laundry and dry cleaning that you need to do in order to grow to a size that we are at today. And so there's many cruxes overall, but in terms of the service that we're delivering, it is to build trust. And to build trust requires that you do a lot of things that are counterintuitive, things that people who would consider financially irresponsible, would consider the bean counters, the guys who are very specific about terms and conditions would not allow you to do, or would tell you it's extremely unwise to do. The people who in customer service tell you don't need to go right. They tell you that the customer is always right, which I don't think is true, by the way.
No.
But they will. But then you look at their policies and you see they say it, but then they don't do it. And so in our case, it's always been really how do we deliver a service that delivers more trust. And over time, we've built technology that creates transparency across the organization. And then as it became mature, we flipped it towards the customer and we made it available to them. Seeing the same photos that our team sees of your clothes. If you want the videos, we share those videos with you. The exact timeline that everything happened, the image that happened, and so on and so on. If things got damaged, we have enough video where if we are negligent, we pay in full, no questions asked. If the garment was already damaged, and if you're a loyal customer, I want you to know that money is not going to stand between us. If you're a loyal customer and you've been with us for a while, even if it was already damaged when it came in, if you believe it's us, I value our relationship with you, even though we have 18,000 monthly actives. I value my relationship with you individually, even though you're only one among 18,000. But because you've been with us for 5, 6, 7, sometimes 10 years, people have been with us. Yeah. That relationship is so much more valuable to me than me being right.
That's amazing.
So the thing we focus on is just building a relationship with customers. And whenever we fail, it's when we fail and making sure that that relationship is honored, respected, and that our customer feels like we are taking more from them than we are trying to give them.
So your values are top notch.
I don't know if I want to qualify the values, but I definitely think that the way we conduct ourselves as a business operates on a set of values that customers appreciate more than the way our competitors do. I think that people vote with their dollars. And the reason we've become the size we're at today and the reason we are among the most successful is that we really try to do our best. And, every now and then we make mistakes. It's funny. I was reviewing a customer service ticket a few months ago and we did something wrong and we should have paid the customer in full. This was 6 months ago, by the way. I reviewed it a few weeks ago, but the ticket was 6 months ago. And we didn't compensate the customer in full because we tried to negotiate with her, even though she's a loyal customer. And she never ordered again.
Oh, really?
And then I went back and I told them, you guys go, and someone owns up to this. They don't have to know it's the founder. But you tell her it was reviewed by someone and that it was determined that we were unfair and you give her her money back. Because I don't care about I care about the 2,000. It's a lot of money, 2,500, 3,000 dirhams. In the end, in the grand scheme of things, for a garment, it's quite a bit of money. But for a relationship with someone who's been with us for 5 years, I'm not going to lose that over 3,000 dirhams.
100%.
And again, sometimes, that's the romantic side of it that I tell you. But then there's the side of it that is a lot more ruthless. Meaning, if I catch someone stealing a dirham or trying to put, someone has a dirham, you're fired on the spot. There's 150 cameras in this laundry. And the idea is that if I cannot, the mechanisms of enforcement need to be clear. So when you do these things and you stand by them 100% of the time, the entire organization shifts and aligns with that. And when I see customer service say sometimes to a customer, due to an unforeseen event, I'm like, guys, people are not stupid. Tell them, say it in plain language. We have a delay in the laundry. The driver's van broke down. Don't create this air of mystery and vagueness because you are worried with the customer. Say it as it is. And then if you're honest, customers will understand. It's kind of going back to like managing expectations with people around you.
Yeah, that's true.
People are 99.999% amazing. And every now and then you get that 0.001% that are terrible, but you can't build your business on the basis, or even your service, or even your life, on the fear that you might just land on one of those guys today or one of those ladies today. You can't. And so we don't operate that way. We operate on the assumption that 99.99% are incredible people and that we should treat them as good as we can and we should serve them as good as we can. And I think that's gone into, and then of course we go into incredible levels of detail with it. Like even the way we write our SOPs, we have a chatbot. If you read the chatbot, the way it talks to you, it's clearly it's feeding off of material written in a certain way, and it's been told to speak to you in a certain way through LLMs because that's what we want you to experience as a customer. I mean, how many people go to this level of detail? Again, we go back to this maniacal focus on detail that Rami and I have. Rami is very incredibly focused on detail.
I think, on that note, I think we're out of time. But I think, honestly, it's refreshing to see a business that goes into detail, that cares about customers, because in this, I feel like it's a world of mass consumption today, and everybody is just doing things and more things, and it's about quantity and not quality. And I really, as a consumer of multiple things in the world, I feel like values and the way people treat you have gone down the drain, and if I find it, I keep it. And really, I applaud you guys for everything that you've been doing. But we're not done yet.
Yeah, we have a question.
So we have a question. Jad, I have something that I do on the podcast at the end, and it's from the psychotherapist Esther Perel, and we talked about it. I know that you know her, and I really appreciate her work. So she created a game called Where Should We Begin? And it has a set of cards, set of questions, created by a therapist, so that should be interesting. So I'm going to give you a pack. I want you to choose a question, random. Right. Nobody knows what the question is, and I want you to answer it honestly and genuinely and briefly because we don't have time anymore. But no, I don't
know when should we end, not when should we begin.
Yeah.
All right, cool. I'm going to take one here from the middle. There it is. Sure. Oh, it's an intense one. I'll never forget being bullied by.
Ooh. Have you been bullied?
Yeah. Put that there. When I used to go to a Saudi primary school called Madaris Najd al-Ahliya lil-Banin.
Free ad, everybody.
Yeah, I don't know if it's an ad because I was bullied there. Yeah, and I remember just being, again, I was a young kid. I don't remember how old I was, but it was on the first break, and these three kids, I'm not going to say nationality, but these three kids come together, and then I was alone, and they took advantage of it, and they were started pushing me, and then eventually, I think one of them tried to literally cowabunga. I remember, if you remember the Ninja Turtle, he tried to cowabunga, drop kick me, and I just remember being, and I got hit. Of course, I got hit, and I remember that, and I don't know. I was in third grade. So I was quite young. It's impactful because I think at that point it was the first moment I remember rage. Wow. And I was bigger than that. I mean, I was bigger than individually each one of them, not one of them. And in the end, I mean, I experienced rage and I acted back on my rage. Yeah, I did. And Yeah, I remember that's when I discovered rage. I acted on it. Yeah, of course. I'm not gonna. That's all.
But
The questions.
I
That's
think
all
even,
the questions about.
honestly, even today, I think bullying happens when you're young and when you're older. And I think as as I get older, I think I at some point in my life, I was bullied when I was older, and I was like, wow.
Yeah, it just changes shapes.
Yeah,
it turns more verbal than it is physical.
Yeah, exactly.
It's true. People bully you verbally quite often the older you get because it's the only form of. It's the only thing they can get away with, right?
You got to have a thick skin, and you got to work on yourself a lot to be able to kind of sustain a very healthy non-rage lifestyle.
Yeah, I don't know. You have to feel the rage. You have to let it out somehow. The question is how.
Jad, thank you so much.
I
love this conversation. I think we can talk for 20 hours non-stop, but we're out of time.
I can easily talk for hours. It's true.
Thank you so much. I loved having you.
Thank you.